if I were to imagine the pitch for this show, somebody walks in and says, "We've got a great idea for a new Star Trek show." Great, let's hear it. All right, we kind of go back to basics here. We put them where they're actually exploring space, and we set it on the other side of the galaxy so they don't have any help, and it's raw, and they're out there, and they're alone, and really get back to what Star Trek used to be. Okay, that sounds great. And get this, for the pilot episode, we'll have a lead villain who is a giant space spore that's trying to have a baby with the crew. Yes! I mean... All right, folks, I am a huge Star Trek fan, and this week marks the 30th anniversary of the premiere of what has widely been considered one of, if not the worst Star Trek series of all time, Star Trek Voyager. Now, I'm actually not a Voyager hater. I'm not a detractor. I'm actually a really big fan of the show. It definitely had its problems throughout the series, but it got progressively better with each season, with the exception of maybe season 7. But even then, it ended on a high note and had what's, in my opinion, one of the best finales in Trek history. But I do remember the pilot episode being really bad. So in honor of the 30th anniversary of the show's premiere, I'm going to be rewatching the pilot for the first time in probably somewhere around 20 years. And I'm going to be giving you a no-holds-barred reaction review as I watch it. This is going to be a commentary video. If you're looking to watch the episode, you can find that on streaming. You can pull out the DVDs, buy the DVDs. If you're looking to see the full reaction, the link should be in the description to that reaction on our Patreon page, and you can support us for $3 a month and get access to all of our content. Or you can pay to just access this post if you're interested in seeing the full reaction. Here we go. This is Star Trek Voyager Season 1, Episode 1, Caretaker. Let's do it. But first, like, subscribe, comment, click the bell for notifications. Consider supporting us on Patreon for exclusive perks. It's really cheap. And subscribe to the Words Like That Arts and Media Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. All right, now shut up and get to it.
Can't have no words like that. Words like that. No, no, no.
Okay, this was all set up in the final season of Star Trek Next Generation and Season 2 of Deep Space Nine, specifically in preparation for Voyager. They had the Maquis. It was a Federation rebellion. They were protesting over the Cardassian Federation Treaty. It was a good concept. I don't think it was executed well on the other two series to set up. It would have been a lot better if we would have actually got to see some of these characters that were actually going to be on the show introduced in the seasons to me. Let's got Chakotay, we got B'Elanna, Tuvok, and I'm going to have a hard time separating knowing what the later seasons became and that everything was a lot better from the visual effects to the acting to the makeup, for that not to kind of taint my view of this. Really early digital effects here that by today's standards just don't measure up. For 90s TV though, it's pretty good. Okay, so that was a pretty good opening. It's pretty good opening there. And this opening sequence, by the way, even the most ardent detractors of the show admit, okay, this is the best opening sequence of any Trek series. It's a great theme, too. I think this theme, it's not as iconic as the original or as the Next Generation theme, which was actually introduced in one of the movies, if I remember correctly. But I don't know, objectively, it's pretty good. I hesitate to say it's the best, but Robert Duncan McNeil was originally played a character called Nick Locarno on a season 5, I think, episode of Star Trek Next Generation. He was a hotshot pilot in Starfleet Academy, and he led his team into a dangerous stunt. Somebody died, and then he led them in a cover-up over it. And I've heard two different versions of this. One version is they wanted his character to be on Voyager, but they didn't want to pay the writer that created him royalties that they would have to if they use him in the show in every episode. So they just tweaked the backstory and changed the character name into Tom Paris, which is who we're fixing to meet here. The other story is that they just created a character that was similar to Nick Locarno, and they were like, hey, we need to cast an actress kind of like Robert Duncan McNeil, that played Nick Locarno, and then they're like, well, we just get Robert Downey McNeil. I think that the first story and that they wanted it to be Nick Locarno, but didn't want to pay the royalties is probably the correct one, particularly since later in the show, the writers inadvertently retcon his backstory to be Nick Locarno's. It's like because they forgot, oh wait, this is actually not Nick Locarno's, Tom Paris. But okay, Janeway, Kate LaRue, great actress, has got a lot of accolades in her later career.
About what?
About a job we'd like you to do for us.
I'm already doing a job for the Federation.
I've been told the Rehab Commission is very pleased with your work. They've given me their approval to discuss this matter with you.
They're doing a good job of establishing the backstory through dialogue. Just a few little lines here, you get the entire backstory.
Ship that disappeared in the Badlands a week ago.
You'd like me to lead you to my former colleagues?
And Robert Downey McNeil, that's another thing mentioned about the acting earlier. He's actually a decent actor, and this is probably the worst job he does in any episode. Like, he gets much looser, and the character gets much more likable as the series goes on. And it's a very relatable character as the series goes on. Right now, he's kind of aloof and a bit of a jerk. Obviously, he's been in trouble. And I feel like the acting is a little bit maybe ham-fisted here. And even did a better job as the Nick Locarno character in Next Generation.
I have no problem helping you track down my friends in the Maquis, Captain. All I need to know from you is what's in it for me.
Officially, you'd be a Starfleet observer during the mission.
Observer? I'm the best pilot you could have.
You'll be an observer. When it's over, you're cut loose.
That's Voyager. Intrepid class, sustainable cruise velocity of
I do like the design of the ship.
Hey, say so. It's been my special pleasure to see many new officers like yourself come through these portholes.
Garrett Wang is Harry Kim. This is just kind of a prime example of how much lower down the totem pole this series was, which is funny because you would think this would be, the production value on this would be like season 8 of Next Generation level, because all of the people that worked on that show came over to this one, and they were doing so well in that last season, Next Generation. But Next Generation had DeForest Kelley reprise his role as McCoy from the original series to kind of be pass the baton for the new show. Deep Space Nine had Patrick Stewart as Picard serve that role. Two great actors, two great characters, bringing some gravitas, some legitimacy. And Voyager gets Quark. Not that I don't like Quark. Really funny character from Deep Space Nine. And I love Armin Shearman as an actor performing the role. But it just doesn't have the same effect as a DeForest Kelley or Patrick Stewart as McCoy Picard in those other series.
How much are you selling these for?
We were just about to negotiate the price.
Come on.
It was a funny scene, sure, but again, for that to be the bridge between series,
The captain asked if you were on board. You should check in with her.
I haven't paid my respects to the captain yet either.
That would be a good thing for a new operations officer to do.
And I'm not sure what the previews leading up to the premiere revealed, but...
Mr. Paris.
Welcome aboard.
See, I feel like this kind of flies in the face of Gene Roddenberry's vision for human interaction, because his whole idea, at least by the time he got to Next Generation, was human beings had kind of settled their differences among each other. So even though, yeah, Tom there did some stuff that was not good and ended up hurting a lot of people, and people died, at least one person I think died. I can't remember the backstory. I'm getting his confused with Nick Locarno. But anyway, people would have been like able to put their own emotional problems with him aside and acted cordially. I feel like the doctor wouldn't treat him like he just treated him, and the commander, first officer, wouldn't treat him like he just treated him. I wouldn't think in Gene Roddenberry's vision for how people would have developed and been a little bit more in control of their emotions and interaction with each other.
Replicator with rice, with vegetables, bowling in style, with pasta.
See, this just seems so high school for these two senior officers to go to the young guy and be like, yeah, you shouldn't hang around here. Let me tell you what he did. Seems kind of unprofessional. Would senior officers, people who got to this rank, have those personality traits? I would hope not.
Was the accident my fault?
Yes. They said you falsified reports.
That's right.
But then you came forward and you admitted that it was your fault?
All I had to do was keep my mouth shut and I was home free. But I couldn't. After they cashiered me out of Starfleet, I went out looking for a fight and found the Maquis. And on my first assignment, I was caught.
It must have been especially tough for you, being the son of an admiral.
Frankly, I think it was tougher on my father than it was on me.
This is also effectively done, crafting the backstory of the character, daddy issues.
I don't need anyone to choose my friends for me.
And that's developing Harry's character and showing what he is. He's willing to give somebody a second chance.
Brace for impact.
3.
That was really just, they could have figured out a better way to do that. Or, you know, where he was trained officer, surely he could get down behind something and said, oh, let me just run out in the middle. Oh, and now he's dead. Spoiler alert. See, this is good. This is unexpected. If you're coming into this blind and you don't know what's going to happen, and you find out half the crew is dead. Some of the people you've been introduced to that you think, well, maybe they'll be main characters here. You got the pilot, the helmsman, first officer, the doctor, and they're dead.
If these sensors are working, we're over 70,000 light years from where we were.
And it's going to take them a long time to get home. Great setup. That's a great setup.
Computer, initiate emergency medical holographic program.
Doctor, EMH.
Tricorder. Medical tricorder.
Robert Picardo is great. He just gets better and better as the show goes on. Again, to me, one of the best characters in all of Star Trek.
A replacement must be requested as soon as possible. I am programmed only as a short-term emergency supplement to the medical team.
And this is really, it's had a lot of action. It opened up with the chase scene and the Maquis, the rebellion crew, getting ripped to you don't know where, what happened to them. And then they get out of here. You had a little bit of the setup, some downtime there, dialogue, establishing backstories, and then big action sequence. They're in this situation. All these people are dead. It's pretty good. Pretty good.
Initiate emergency lock-off.
Are they getting beamed out? What? And we're like, all right, this is kind of weird. They're
Come up here. Come
been transported
on now.
to
I have a pitcher of lemon.
country sitting on Earth.
Welcome.
We're real glad to drop by.
Now we can get started. You're all invited to the welcoming bee.
See, this is kind of getting a little weird. Like, okay, what's going on here? One of the things that made this really not that great for me is the reveal of what actually is going on. It's kind of weird out there, even for Star Trek, which is known for having some weird out there episodes.
Proceed ahead of schedule.
The psychopathic small town villagers. See, they've got the Maquis, which we obviously deduced that from the life sign readings.
Almost 3 days.
3 days.
Captain, the Maquis ship is powering up its engines.
Commander Chakotay, my name is Captain Catherine Janeway.
How do you know my name?
We were on a mission to find you when we were brought here by the array.
A member of our crew is missing too. Milana Torres, my engineer. 3 of us will transport to your ship.
Watch out, Captain, they're armed.
It's good to have you back, Mr. Tuvok.
I must inform you that I was assigned to infiltrate your crew, sir. I am Captain Janeway's chief of security.
I see you had help.
It's good to see you too, Chakotay.
What was your price this time?
You are speaking to a member of my crew.
Again, I feel like a little bit overreacting here, but I do like the character dynamics that are being established here. You realize you're going to have a lot of tension among these people with this history.
I'd like to go with you. I'd hate to see anything happen to Harry.
You're starting to really get that, okay, these guys, there's some goodness down there, and he's got a tough exterior, he's got a bad past, made some mistakes, but there's something there. I never realized how Tom-centric this pilot was.
Oh, why have you come back? You don't have what I need.
Where are our people?
They are no longer here.
What have you done to them?
You don't have what I need. They might.
They are our responsibility. That may be a concept you don't understand.
Oh, no. I do understand. There just is not enough time left. I must honor a debt that can never be repaid. but my search has not been going well. But sending you back is terribly complicated. Don't you understand? I don't have time. Not enough time!
So we get here this character who's going to be known as the caretaker. He obviously has a sense of morality of some type, but it seems to be misplaced. And he's also run out of time. He's also incredibly powerful. He established that through not only the dialogue, just a little bit of dialogue, not too much, telling instead of showing, but also through his actions. He was able to just, with a wave of his hand, send them back to their ship.
How do you feel?
Ocampa.
What am I doing here? Where am I?
You're very ill.
Ill? No, there's some mistake. I'm not.
There are no nucleogenic particles in the atmosphere.
That would mean the planet isn't capable of producing brain.
I spoke to your family before I left.
Are they well?
Well, but worried about you.
That would not be an accurate perception, Captain.
See, that's another thing. They kind of flip-flop on what it means to be a Vulcan. Do they not actually experience the emotions? Because he said, well, we don't worry. Or do they suppress their emotions? Because we get that explanation in some iterations of Star Trek, some episodes of Star Trek.
Whoever you are, I found this waste zone first.
And they completely changed his character. This version, he's supposed to be kind of a con man, sleazebag, and then they drop that pretty quickly and he just becomes like this lovable fuzzball mascot type character.
Of course, we'd want to compensate you for your trouble.
There's really very little that you could offer me. Unless, of course, you had water.
That was really good because you expect it to be, he's going to ask for some kind of monetary compensation. And then he says, water. And you realize like, oh, this is a really, really rough spot of the universe.
We have a technology which can take you instantly from
They
your ship
established
to
that they're
ours.
superior because nobody else can transport except the caretaker. His character's actually coming off really good here. I know I didn't watch the pilot until after I had watched the later seasons. Some when they originally aired, some in first run reruns. So when I went back and watched the pilot, I'd already known what Neelix was then, so I really had a really hard time getting into his character here on this episode in the first season. But objectively, just coming in like I'm watching this blind, he actually works.
I don't find this at all amusing, Starfleet.
And her calling him Starfleet is supposed to be like a thing, and she continues to do it, but it seems a little forced.
We're underground.
You lived on the surface?
Until the warming began.
The warming?
When our surface turned into a desert and the caretaker came to protect us.
But why did it turn into a desert?
He opened a deep chasm in the ground and led our ancestors to this place. Since then, he has provided for all our needs.
I'm curious to know how you've interpreted the caretaker's reason for sending us here.
We believe he must have separated you from your own species for their protection from your illness. Perhaps he's trying to prevent a plague.
We weren't sick until we met your caretaker. There have been others? Like us?
Yes.
Where are they?
Bum.
I'm afraid the others did not recover.
The rich cormalline deposits are very much in demand.
The Ocampa use it for barter?
Not the Ocampa, the Kazon Ogla. They are. Kazon sects control this part of the quadrant. Some have food, some have ore, some have water. They all trade and they all kill each other.
The Kazon conceptually are an interesting species. I like the whole division where you got these different tribes that are competing with each other for control of this section of the quadrant.
She is Ocampa. Why would you be interested in such worthless creatures? They live only 9 years.
See, that's interesting. The 9 years lifespan.
Tell them to drop their weapons. Step aside.
That's pretty good. This is pretty good.
Come on. Didn't I promise I'd save you?
And now you know, okay, he was scamming them the whole time, which is not really in his character at all moving forward in the show. But it is, again, it is working well for this episode.
The ancient tunnels that brought us here still exist. Over the years, small breaches in security barriers have appeared just large enough for someone to get through. It would take days, maybe even weeks to break through. You have to rest. Conserve your strength.
Please, it's our only chance. Everyone except my patient is to leave immediately.
Computer, end medical holographic program.
His eyes right there is perfect. Perfect. His timing impeccable.
Now that she's free, we're leaving this system together.
Neelix, these people rescued me. It would be wrong not to help them now.
We need to talk to every doctor and nurse at this hospital. See what they can tell us about Taurus and Kim.
It seems to be trying to seal the energy conduits.
Understood. Keep a channel open.
I believe that the caretaker is dying. He increases the energy supply to provide the city with a surplus to last at least 5 years. Then he seals the conduits. The logical conclusion is that he does not intend to continue his role as caretaker. I believe the debt that can never be repaid is very likely a debt to them.
They're in one of the tunnels, Captain. I can't see them, but they're up there. We're going after them. Paris to Chainway. Chakotay, Tuvok, do your read. Voyager, make that 3 to beam up. Lock in on the other comm badge and energize.
My leg is broken.
Neelix, help me with Tuvok.
Get out of here, Paris, before the whole thing comes down!
If I save your butt, your life belongs to me.
Isn't that some kind of Indian custom?
Wrong tribe.
That's funny. Chakotay, I know he gets a lot of hate, but he was actually a family favorite because my maternal side of the family is of Cherokee descent, so he's actually kind of a family favorite for us, a bit of a hero. They never did say what tribe he was actually from. It was always kind of generic and vague.
We've got to get back to our ship.
Fix his broken leg.
I strongly advise you to rest.
Something you did turned their planet into a desert, didn't it? That was the debt that could never be repaid.
We had no idea that our technology would be so destructive to their atmosphere.
Why were you bringing ships here? Infecting people with a fatal illness.
They died because they were incompatible.
This is where it gets weird.
You've been trying to procreate?
I needed someone to replace me. Someone who would understand the enormous responsibility.
If he was able to succeed this late in the game, knowing he's fixing to die, is he going to have time to have a child, impart all this knowledge? It's just weird. It's like, you know, he's trying to breed with the crew.
Kazon just got some backup.
I'm setting a collision course, but the guidance system is disabled. I'll have to pilot the ship manually.
I can access the system to send us back to Federation space, but it will take several hours to activate.
I have initiated a self-destruct program.
If you destroy the array, we'll have no way to get home.
I didn't remember that.
In minutes, it will be destroyed. You have to go.
The caretaker?
Kind of a weird alien. I know the whole digital thing was new and interesting and I guess cheaper than building a model, but
The self-destruct program has been damaged. Now, this installation will not be destroyed. Kazon must not be allowed to gain control of it.
Shall I activate the program to get us back?
And what happens to the Ocampa after we're gone?
But would they even be able to fend the Kazon off for the time it would take for them? Because he says it's going to take several hours.
Prime directive would seem to apply.
Would it?
Guys, I got to tell you, I would go home. I mean, that's over and above and beyond and really, really great of them to do that, to care about this species like that. But you know, your first responsibility is to your immediate family, your immediate circle, which in this case is her crew, and they need to go back home. Although again, I don't know if they would actually be able to go back home and fend off the Kazon. I don't know, but I guess you'd have to give it a try.
That array is the only way we have to get back home.
I'm aware everyone has families and loved ones at homes they want to get back to. So do I.
I'm going to sacrifice
The lives of the Ocampa.
all of
For
that.
our convenience. We'll have to find another way.
But it's not convenience. It's your lives, because you're unlikely to survive the trip, or at least a lot of your crew's unlikely to survive the trip, and they don't. And she did it to save this species who is pretty much totally unwilling, at least their leadership and the bulk of the population, unwilling to fend for themselves. And they're in this situation because of this guy, the same guy that's brought Voyager over there. Bad call. She's the leader, she's the captain. It's almost like being a parent. And I think about my household. I'm in a position to take care of my children. Somebody else is over here in a bad shape. And it's like, well, I tell you what, I will sacrifice the safety of my children to help these people out over here. I can't do that.
I've invited Chakotay and the other Maquis to become part of this crew.
Will you provide a bodyguard for me, Captain?
Mr. Chakotay said something about his life belonging to you. He'll be taking responsibility for your safety. He'll also be my first officer. I'm granting a field commission of lieutenant to Thomas Eugene Paris. I'm only sorry your father won't know.
Oh, he'll know when we get back.
We'd like to go with you. We'd be valuable colleagues.
We're alone. In an uncharted part of the galaxy.
Could have fixed the array at home, wouldn't have to make this speech, but whatever.
Both crews are going to have to work together if we're to survive. And as the only Starfleet vessel assigned to the Delta Quadrant, we'll continue to follow our directive to seek out new worlds and explore space. It would take 75 years to reach the Federation. But I'm not willing to settle for that. Somewhere along this journey, we'll find a way back. Set a course for home.
Aye, Captain.
Rick Berman, Michael Piller, Jerry Taylor, three really great writers, producers that were responsible for a lot of the good things that went down with Next Generation in its later season. Yet, I feel like, to me, they missed the mark on this one. This is another case of, you would think, with the pedigree producing this series, coming off of the success of Next Generation, of how great that series was, even though this last season kind of went downhill a little bit on Next Generation. But you would think, after all they've learned, they would come out swinging. This would be the best pilot, potentially best Star Trek series ever. I will say, though, I actually overall think this is better than what I remembered it. There are things that bothered me whenever I would watch it previously that didn't bother me, that I was okay with. I thought, that's actually not that bad. Then there were other things that didn't bother me back then that now I look at like, that's a little cheesy. That really doesn't land. Does that really make sense in terms of the character taking that action? It's like, if I were to imagine the pitch for this show, even though I know this was done by those three producers, Star Trek alums, there at the end, just doing like a Ryan George pitch meeting thing. Like somebody walks in and says, "We've got a great idea for a new Star Trek show." Great, let's hear it. All right, we kind of go back to basics here. We put them where they're actually exploring space, and we set it on the other side of the galaxy so they don't have any help, and it's raw, and they're out there, and they're alone, and really get back to what Star Trek used to be. Okay, that sounds great. And get this, for the pilot episode, we'll have a lead villain who is a giant space spore that's trying to have a baby with the crew. Yes! I mean, that element, really weird, really contrived. They could have easily made it where the caretaker was trying to find a species that he could transfer his knowledge to and genetically modify it to make immortal, so they could, or at least give a longer lifespan, so that they could run the thing. Or if he could find one that already lives a long time, maybe. There were other ways to work that didn't make it as weird. I feel like that was just a really unpalatable reveal for me personally. Other issues with the show, particularly compared it with the later seasons and coming off of Next Generation, which had just ended the previous television season, the acting was not as good as it gets. It gets a lot better as the show goes on. Same with the characters, same with the writing. The Kes character didn't really dig her on here, knowing what she becomes over the course of the series, and they didn't even know what to do with her and just completely canned the character after the third season. And what's she doing on there? The Neelix character, again, worked a lot better here. Even though he's totally different from the entire rest of the series, worked a lot better here than I remembered, but totally superfluous. Could have been a one-off and they just leave him. Tom, I didn't realize this episode is really a Tom-centric episode, and I end up liking Tom a lot better. We had moments here where Robert Duncan McNeil's acting was really good. The character came off as relatable and likable. Other times, not so much. As the series progresses, he's really relatable, incredibly likable. Robert Duncan McNeil does a great job moving into later seasons. And I didn't realize how much this episode was really about him. The writing was actually really good in terms of developing the backstories of all the characters without playing the backstories. Just a few lines here and there. It didn't really get into heavy-handed dialogue, telling instead of showing, a little bit just to get the general idea of who these people were and what their dynamics are going to be moving forward. I thought that was really well done. The opening credits, again, were really great. The sequences, the special effects, again, I feel like they weren't as good as the last season of Next Generation. Again, though, 90s television, still really good special effects for the time period. I do have a hard time getting back into the frame of mind of 30 years ago watching this, because there were some things that came off kind of cliche and cheesy and clunky that I'm not sure would have at the time, because now we're comparing this to another 30 years of shows that have come after that have used those same tropes. And it's like, well, the farther back you go, the less cheesy and cliched those lines and tropes are, because you're going back to the source whenever they hadn't been used as much as they've been used 30 years since. So overall, yeah, I didn't think it was as terrible as I remember. Still, and in fact, I would go so far to say that this is actually a better pilot than the Star Trek Next Generation pilot, which I've never cared for. Encounter at Farpoint, really weird. That whole first season and really most of the second season, really weird. Gene Roddenberry trying to bring his vision, his kind of evolved vision for Star Trek into 80s television just didn't work, which is why when they brought Michael Piller in for season 3, the show really came into its own. They stepped up their game. The writing got better. The look of the production and the character makeup, everything just improved from that point forward. But I do think this was a better pilot than that Next Generation pilot, even though Next Generation overall ended up being a better series. So yeah, and really this makes me want to revisit, if not the whole series, at least the first couple of seasons that I always kind of thought, yeah, these aren't really that good, because that was more enjoyable than I thought. Writing was overall better than I thought. The one big thing for me was that the plot twist of what the caretaker was trying to do. He was trying to reproduce with the crew. Seems a little contrived. Again, seems a little weird. They could have easily come up with something better that made more sense. It was more palatable. That was less contrived. But glad I rewatched that. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope there's some Trekkies out there that watched this and enjoyed it. If you did, we may be doing some more reactions like this to science fiction properties or big movies that came out in the 90s, which was the era that I grew up in. So stay tuned to the channel, and we'll see you next time.